Breaking news. Tensions are escalating across multiple global flashpoints tonight. As the United States increases its military focus on Iran, Russia is stepping away from active engagement on the last remaining nuclear arms treaty with Washington, raising fears of a world without limits on the largest nuclear arsenals ever built. Iran is warning that any U.S. strike would trigger all-out war. Israel is on heightened alert, and diplomatic channels are under extreme strain. With global security hanging in the balance, world leaders now face decisions that could reshape international stability for years to come. The world is once again holding its breath. 3 nuclear powers, 1 collapsing treaty, and a Middle East already burning with tension. As Washington watches Iran, as Israel moves to high alert, and as global diplomacy fractures behind closed doors, a single announcement from Moscow has sent shockwaves through the international order. The last nuclear treaty between the United States and Russia is slipping toward collapse, and with it, decades of fragile restraint. This is not just politics. This is not just posturing. This is a story of how the world may be drifting toward its most dangerous moment since the Cold War, the last barrier. For decades, nuclear treaties acted as invisible guardrails, preventing rivalry from turning into annihilation. At the center of that system stood New START, the last remaining nuclear arms control agreement between the United States and Russia. It limited the number of deployed nuclear warheads. It enforced inspections. And most importantly, it forced communication between 2 historic rivals. But today, that barrier is crumbling. Russia has confirmed there are no active, specific talks with the United States to extend or replace New START before its expiration in 2026. No roadmap, no guarantees, no clear future. For the first time in modern history, the world is facing the possibility of 0 legally binding limits on the 2 largest nuclear arsenals on Earth. Putin's message to Washington. President Vladimir Putin's stance has been calm, but unmistakably firm. From the Kremlin's perspective, trust has eroded. Sanctions, proxy conflicts, military expansions near Russian borders. Moscow argues that strategic stability no longer exists. Russian officials insist this is not a threat, but a reality check. Yet behind the language of diplomacy lies a chilling signal. Russia is reassessing its nuclear posture. Discussions about resuming nuclear weapons testing, dormant for decades, are back on the table. Contingency plans are being drawn. Scenarios once considered unthinkable are now openly debated. To Washington, the message is clear. The era of predictable nuclear restraint may be ending. Across the Atlantic, Donald Trump watches a rapidly shifting world. Known for rejecting traditional diplomatic frameworks, Trump has repeatedly criticized arms control agreements as one-sided and outdated. Now, as geopolitical tensions spike on multiple fronts, the pressure is mounting. To allies, Trump projects strength. To rivals, unpredictability. To critics, escalation. And nowhere is that escalation more visible than in the Middle East. Iran has become the focal point of American military attention. U.S. naval assets are moving closer to the region. Aircraft carriers patrol contested waters. Missile defenses are on high alert. Tehran, meanwhile, has issued a stark warning. Any U.S. strike, direct or indirect, will be treated as all-out war. Iranian leaders accuse Washington of intimidation and regime pressure. The U.S. accuses Iran of destabilization and nuclear ambition. Diplomacy exists, but only indirectly. Trust is virtually non-existent. One miscalculation, one misread signal, and a regional conflict could explode into something far larger. Israel is watching closely. With Iran's influence stretching across the region, Israeli defense forces have moved into heightened readiness. For Jerusalem, the threat is existential. For Tehran, resistance is ideological. And for Washington, the alliance is non-negotiable. This triangle, U.S., Iran, Israel, has long been volatile. But now, it unfolds against a backdrop of global nuclear uncertainty. A regional war no longer stays regional. While no formal trilateral talks are publicly confirmed, Russia's relationship with Iran adds another layer of complexity. Moscow and Tehran share strategic interests, energy cooperation, regional influence, Resistance to Western pressure. Russia may not want war, but also benefits from a distracted West. As U.S. focus shifts to Iran, attention drifts from Eastern Europe, sanctions enforcement and NATO expansion. In global power politics, distraction is leverage. If New START expires without replacement, the consequences are profound. No inspections, no transparency, no limits. Nuclear competition would move into the shadows, driven by suspicion rather than verification. Military planners would assume worst-case scenarios. Defense budgets would surge. Risk calculations would narrow. History shows us where this leads. During the Cold War, it wasn't malice that nearly caused catastrophe, it was misunderstanding. What makes this moment especially dangerous is timing. Multiple crises, multiple theaters, multiple nuclear-armed actors. Ukraine, the Middle East, the Indo-Pacific. Each crisis feeds the next. Decision-makers face pressure at home, scrutiny abroad, and shrinking room for compromise. In such moments, restraint becomes fragile. Despite the tension, doors are not fully closed. Back-channel communication still exists. Military hotlines remain active. Diplomats continue to talk, quietly, but diplomacy requires time, and time is running out. Treaties do not collapse overnight. They erode through neglect. And wars rarely begin with intent. They begin with assumptions. The world now stands at crossroads. One path leads to renewed dialogue, restraint, and imperfect cooperation. The other leads to unchecked rivalry, escalation, and irreversible consequences. Putin's message, Trump's posture, Iran's warning. Each move adds pressure to an already unstable system. History will judge not the rhetoric, but the decisions made in silence. Because in the nuclear age, the most dangerous sound is not an explosion. It is the absence of agreement.